I think you're right, though.
But how this is the conundrum here. They appear to want to offer an off ramp to Russia, but according to their demands, dictates, and according to their policies, when they are losing at every turn, how can you offer an off ramp to the victor when you're getting smashed on the battlefield, you're getting smashed in the political arena, and you're getting smashed economically? Everything that you tried to do to them, it boomerang back. Russia has become the largest economy in Europe, according to all statistics now. So the sanctions have proven to not only not work, but have been detrimental and deadly even to the nations that implemented those sanctions. So how can you offer an off-ramp to a victorious nation and demand that they cede so many things in order to receive an off-ramp from a loser?
Rashid, I wish I had a full answer to that very clear, simple question you have, because it is a wonderful, simple question. And I mean, this, because people often, I've noticed, when they're trying to analyze the planning and the methods of oligarchical manipulation, past or present, they tend to fall into one of two camps of either attributing the agency, the causal agency of action, those planning groups that try to orchestrate assassinations, coups d'etats, wars throughout all of our history, as being either simply motivated by some combination of corruption and stupidity, or inversely, absolute genius, brilliance, almost godlike powers of foresight and power of action. And I don't think either one is really correct, but I don't think either one is false either. I think that it's not exclusive one or the other. I think there's an element of brilliance in this force of evil that is represented by these leading families and some of their auxiliaries within the British Royal Society, Cambridge Chatham House, some of these inner core think tanks. There is a level of sophistication and brilliance that has to be almost respected in a disgusting way. But at the same time, there's a level of stupid that's also infused into the mix, based on arrogance and a tendency to self-perceive as if they themselves were the gods they wish to project outwards to their victims. They want us to think of them as the gods of Egypt, who are immortal and thus slave. Don't bother trying to rise up because you're dealing with immortal gods. Like, you can't. Just know your place. That's how they would like that type of imagery to be projected. But then they kind of start believing it sometimes. And I think they start believing in their own immutability. So that causes them to historically fuck up. And I don't know if I'm allowed to use that language.
Oh, yes. No.
Sorry. Okay.
Yes.
But I'll generally try to tone it down for family-friendly purposes. But I do find that looking at history, there are these situations that I see as paralleling what's going on today, where when it comes down to crunch time, they're very good at planning and the art. They have there's a certain awareness of how to manipulate the zeitgeist, mass mental behavior, herd behavior. There's things that you learn when you're brought into some of the higher up, like if you're a Cambridge apostle, like Bertrand Russell or John Maynard Keynes or any of these figures. You don't learn what a community college student in LA learns. You're going to be learning a different anthropology, a different history, a different set of appreciations for real factors of the mind that you have to be aware of if you are going to be a manager of the empire in continuity over, when you go out of the university and into life. To be trusted, you have to know these things, but you have to also have compromised something human within yourself along the way, which is, I think, what many Rhodes Scholars, unfortunately, go through before they're processed in Oxford and then resent back to become, Strobe Talbot or Bill Clinton or any of the freaks, managing Biden, like Jake Sullivan, Rhodes Scholar, or Susan Rice, or any of these creeps. So something has to be broken for them to have access to that broader spectrum of knowledge. Now, when it comes down to crunch time of action, what looked good in the planning stages on the whiteboard, all of a sudden they tend to screw up a lot. And I saw that you could see that with the rise of the Hitler machine. Hitler would not have been a factor in anything had it not been, he was a fringe grouping in the 20s in Germany. Nobody in Germany really took this guy seriously, or the Nazi fringe group that he represented. So how did he become what he became? Well, it was without the patronage and support of the Rockefeller Foundation, of the J.P. Morgan Trust, of the DuPonts, of the Montague Norman Bank of England machine, of the Rockefeller Standard Oil Petroleum Corporate, which was like providing oil, all the oil needs to the Nazi machine before and during and after Operation Barbarossa, right? If it weren't for that, there would not have been a Nazi problem, you know? So why did they stop? Why is it at a certain point, all of these operatives and agencies who put so much effort into the cultivation of their fascist enforcer, Mussolini had a very similar story. The Japanese fascists were very much shaped by British foreign policy gurus and British militarists who were assisting them in building up their giant war machine from the end of the Sino-Japanese War of 1894. The Japanese were already being cultivated to be a fascist war machine, and they'd been profiled, you know, based on their sort of samurai feudal legacy that was amplified by those advisors from London who were sent down to cultivate this thing, to use it when it became expedient. So why did they have to abort that? Well, they aborted that because it looked good on paper. Everything was supposed to work. And then Hitler all of a sudden started listening to his generals and realizing, well, hey, I've got this giant war machine, this giant arsenal that's been curated for me, built up with the support of British foreign policy that helped me take control of Czechoslovakia, that increasingly helped me to take control easily of Poland. That was with British back-channel diplomacy and advisors the whole time, making sure that was successful. Alex Craner did a wonderful deep dive into that story. But then all of a sudden he's like, well, Hitler said, or came to the conclusion that I can be the senior partner. I don't have to be the junior partner of a new world order. I could be the senior, and Britain can abide by my desires. They could be my junior partner. And yeah, they'll get jurisdictional controls of India and different parts of the world, but I can be the top dog. And some British grand strategists were okay with that. Lloyd George and Neville Chamberlain and the factions they represent were okay. They were like, okay, let's just, roll with the punches. We put all this effort into it. Let's just do it. And then others like Leo Amory and Churchill they weren't good, but they were a little bit more able to recognize that this was not in their own self-interest, and that they would be stripped of a lot of the power that they thought that they deserved. And there was a giant faction fight, a hectic, fearful faction fight over what would be the foreign policy of Britain. The Churchill groupings ended up winning out. But they created a total mess that forced them to go in and have to abort their project to live to fight another day. And then try to create new narratives. That only kind of addresses what you said, because what you said is something similar but different, because they're actually at a place right now where I think some of what they're saying about wanting to create an off-ramp for Russia is based on the need to create stories to account for why things happened for the future. Like the oligarchy thinks about the future more than your average Joe who's like that we meet and live with day to day. Like, for example, as soon as January 6th happened, you immediately on January 9th, you had a team of historians deployed to Washington from Chatham House, London. That's the mothership of the mothership. What Hillary Clinton calls the CFR as the mothership. The CFR is the American branch of the mothership Chatham House, the Royal Institute for International Affairs. That's the Cecil Rhodes Milner Roundtable group that set this thing up in 1919 and had their American branch always. They had a Canadian and Australian and New Zealand and South African branch too to coordinate grand strategy. They sent a team of historians to America with the explicit purpose of setting the record straight over how what happened on January 6th was worse than the Civil War. And they began to put this to work. So even though today we're a little bit closer to that action from a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, they're thinking about so we can see some of the, like, where the fraud is located in that whole event. Whereas these groupings are trying to create a narrative, a story for what future children who are like babies now will be learning about this thing that happened that's worse than the Civil War. So they create stories for the future. And I think that that's partially what they're doing now, is setting the stage for the messaging for what history books and narrative makers, myth makers will be saying about what happened in Ukraine. Though I think that it's likely that it is understood even by those putting that out that the ultimate size of Ukraine is going to get very small in reality, whether, you know, that's going to involve some of the Polish coming out, you know, who are slobbering, drooling at the chops to get control of their historic, you know, right to control Galicia and some West Ukrainian territories. And I don't think that I think it's much more better understood by those who actually make decisions, even on the wrong side of this game, that those territories of Crimea and Donbass are not going back to Ukraine. I think that it's recognized, I believe, that they screwed up, but it's taking a while to actually get to some decision-making process. Because again, they're so enmeshed in it. They've committed so much to this game and this agenda that they can't just go and they can't say we fucked up, or they can't say that the Zelensky plan for, you know, putting Putin at the ICC for war crimes and kicking him out and asking for an apology. They can't say that that's a bad idea, but they know it's not going to work. So they're going through the steps. I think they're going through some motions while actually preparing the groundwork for a reshifting, probably with a focus on burning, you know, trying to set Belarus on fire, Hungary on fire, with other NED, other types of operations that, you know, Samantha Powers was deployed to sort of go to Hungary not that long ago and reactivate or re-coordinate some of the NED-funded human rights organizations that are covers for mass chaos operations, like from the Maidan. That's what they would like to do. Of course, even that's being preemptively reacted to by Wagner showing up all of a sudden in Belarus as a preemptive action there to make sure that there's as much stability there. I think Bosnia is obviously under attack. Not attack, but I mean the whole Bosnia region is being reactivated to be part of the chess piece again to light a region on fire. But also, like I said, Indochina is a big one. So they're also looking at shifting their forces much more seriously into the Indo-Chinese region, as well, with Taiwan and Japan going through some weird stuff.
And Thailand.
Thailand, yeah, they're lighting fires there too. Yep.